Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're heading somewhere quite special, venturing into Balochistan in Pakistan to explore a really ancient and I think deeply significant site, the Hinglaj Mata temple.
It really is. And what makes Hinglaj Mata so compelling is, well, it's a Shakti Peetha, one of the major ones.
Right. And maybe we should quickly explain Shakti Peethas for anyone listening.
Good idea. They're considered incredibly sacred spots all across the subcontinent, really. The belief is that parts of the goddess Sati's body fell onto these locations.
Making them points of intense divine energy.
Exactly. And Hinglaj holds a particularly high status among them.
Because it's where her head is said to have fallen, correct?
That's the tradition, yes, Sati said. So you can imagine the level of importance, especially for Hindus, including the community living within Pakistan today.
Absolutely. But it's more than just a Hindu site, isn't it? That's part of what makes it so fascinating.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Hinglaj sort of transcends simple categories. It's this powerful symbol of, cultural fusion, interfaith respect.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try and unpack all of that.
Yeah, we'll look at the mythology where the story begins, then trace its history, the mentions we have.
And the geography too, right?
Yeah.
The actual place. It sounds quite mystical.
Definitely. The landscape itself plays a role. Hingle National Park. We'll touch on the pilgrimage, the journey people make.
The rituals, and crucially, this aspect of cultural harmony you mentioned.
Yes, how it functions in a region where Islam is the majority faith, yet this ancient Hindu site is deeply revered, even by local Muslim community.
Okay, sounds like a journey. Let's start at the beginning then with the mythology, the origin story.
Right, the very foundation. It all goes back to Sati, who was married to Lord Shiva, and her father, King Daksha. Well, he wasn't happy about the marriage. He deeply disrespected Shiva, held this grand sacrifice, a yajna, and deliberately didn't invite Shiva or Sati.
A huge insult.
Massive. And Sati, unable to bear this disrespect towards her husband, went to the sacrifice uninvited.
And things escalated?
Dramatically. Faced with her father's continued insults towards Shiva, she couldn't endure it. So she invoked her yogic powers and immolated herself right there.
Wow. A profound act of devotion and protest.
It sent shockwaves. When Shiva learned what happened, his grief was boundless, destructive.
This is where the Tandava comes in.
Yes. He performed the Tandava, the dance of cosmic destruction, carrying Sati's body. His sorrow was so immense, it threatened the very fabric of the universe.
So the cosmos itself was in danger. How was that resolved?
It required divine intervention.
Yeah.
Lord Vishnu stepped in. To pacify Shiva and save the universe, he used his divine discus, the Sudarshan chakra.
A cosmic purpose, exactly. The pieces of her body scattered across the land, and each spot where a piece landed became sanctified. It became a Shakti Peetha, a seat of divine feminine power.
And Hinglaj is where her head landed, the Hingle, as some texts call it. Precisely. That's the belief. Hingle, referring to the vermilion or the essence, the head, and that's how the place got its name. Hinglaj Mata, Hingala Devi, directly linked to that divine consciousness.
So the very ground there is imbued with this potent energy.
Potent is the right word. And it's interesting, texts like the Devi Purana and the Kalika Purana explicitly recognize Hinglaj. They mention it as a major tantric center.
Tantra. So we're talking about practices aimed at harnessing that divine energy.
Exactly. These texts highlight its ancient power. For centuries, tantric practitioners, sadhaks, and also nath yogis, these ascetic yogis known for intense practices, they undertook these incredibly difficult journeys to Hinglaj.
Why? What was the goal?
It was seen as a place for immense spiritual gain. The hardship of the journey itself, through that harsh terrain, was considered a form of, karmic cleansing, purification.
So the journey was as important as the destination?
In many ways, yes. It speaks volumes about the perceived power of the place.
Okay, let's shift from mythology to history. Do we have solid historical records mentioning Hinglaj?
Well, solid in the ancient context can be tricky, but the mention in texts like the Kalika Purana is significant historical evidence in itself, pointing to its antiquity.
Right. These aren't just myths divorced from time.
No. And beyond those specific religious texts, there are other hints. Some scholars suggest that travelogues from, say, Chinese pilgrims who passed through the region centuries ago might contain references, perhaps under a different name or described in a way we have to interpret.
Interesting. Like Xuanzang or Faxian.
Potentially, yes. Though direct, unambiguous mentions are debated. but it suggests the site was known beyond the immediate followers.
And then there's folklore, oral tradition.
Absolutely crucial. The fact that Hinglaj features so prominently and consistently in the folklore of Balochistan among different communities, that points to deep, long-standing cultural roots. It wasn't just a flash in the pan.
It tells a story of continuous presence.
Right, which is even more amazing when you consider where it is.
Let's talk about that, the geography. Hingle National Park.
Yes, in Balochistan. It's remote, arid. Quite a dramatic landscape, actually.
Does the landscape itself add to the feeling of the place?
Oh, definitely. The Hingle River flows nearby, which is always significant in sacred geography. Water sources in arid lands often are.
And I read something about red water.
Oh, yes. The red water phenomenon. Sometimes the water in the area takes on a reddish hue. Geologically, there might be reasons, mineral content, perhaps algae. But for devotees, it's often seen as, well, auspicious, a sign of the goddess's presence or power, bleeding earth almost.
Adding to the mystique.
It really does. And you also have these unusual natural features like unique salt formations, mud volcanoes nearby, and of course the cave itself where the main worship happens. It all contributes to this aura of, natural mysticism.
A place apart.
Truly. And reaching it, that's the Hinglaj Yatra, the pilgrimage.
Which you mentioned is incredibly arduous.
It is. Traditionally, it involved a long, difficult trek through the desert, facing harsh conditions, extreme temperatures, scarcity of resources.
Why undertake such hardship?
It's seen as tapasya, a form of austerity and devotion. The physical challenge is part of the spiritual offering. It tests faith, builds resilience.
I imagine there must be traditions associated with the journey itself.
Oh, absolutely. There are specific traditional songs, bhajans, and chants that pilgrims sing along the way. These provide spiritual sustenance, build community among the travelers, and keep the focus on the divine goal. It's a whole moving culture.
So once pilgrims finally arrive after that trek, what happens at the temple? What are the rituals?
The core worship takes place within a natural cave. It's not an elaborate temple structure in the way you might picture some others. The focus is on a small mud shrine, representing the goddess.
More elemental, perhaps?
Very much so. Worship involves typical Hindu practices, offering prayers, coconuts, incense, red cloth, which is symbolic of the Devi, but it's the simplicity and the setting that are striking.
And the caretakers, you mentioned something remarkable about them.
Yes, this is really fascinating. Traditionally, the day-to-day caretakers of the shrine, the mujawirs, are often from local Muslim tribes.
Muslim caretakers for a Hindu shrine.
Yes, they hold the deity in immense reverence. They don't necessarily see her as Sati in the Hindu Puranic sense, but they deeply respect the place and the entity there, often referring to her affectionately and respectfully as Nani, meaning maternal grandmother, or Nani Pir, the saintly grandmother.
Nani Pir. That's incredible. It speaks volumes about the local relationship with the site.
It really does. It points to a shared sacred space, a history of coexistence and mutual respect that's quite profound, especially in today's world.
Let's dig into that a bit more, the spiritual symbolism of the head falling here.
Well, the head, across many traditions, symbolizes consciousness, intellect, wisdom, the seat of thought and identity.
So Sati's head landing here suggests this place is a source of what?
Enlightenment.
Awakening.
Exactly. It's seen as a place potent for inner awakening, for connecting with higher consciousness. It represents the pinnacle of Shakti, the divine feminine power, focused on wisdom and spiritual insight.
And this inherent power translates into that cultural harmony we keep touching upon.
I think so. The sheer spiritual power of the place seems to command respect across different communities. The Baloch tribes, including groups like the Siddhis, who themselves have unique syncretic traditions, show profound respect for Hinglaj Mata, or Nani Pir.
Is it just respect, or is there interaction?
There's interaction, there are stories, folk tales that are shared between Hindu pilgrims and local Muslims. Sometimes even shared rituals or practices have evolved over time. It's a living example of peaceful coexistence built around a sacred site.
That's a powerful narrative. How does this fit into the modern context? Hinglaj is in Pakistan, an Islamic republic.
Which makes its survival and continued reverence even more significant. It remains a hugely important pilgrimage site for Pakistan's Hindu minority. For them, it's a vital connection to their faith, their heritage, right there in their homeland.
Is its status officially recognized or protected?
Yes, the site generally receives protection. Its cultural and historical significance is recognized, thankfully, beyond just its religious identity for Hindus. It's seen as part of the broader heritage of Balochistan and Pakistan.
That's encouraging. How does Hinglaj compare to other famous Shakti Peethas?
Well, it's one of the principal ones, often listed among the 4 or the 51, depending on the tradition. Each Peetha has its own unique story, its own local traditions.
Like Kamakya in Assam or Vaishno Devi.
Exactly. Kamakya is associated with the Yoni. Vaishno Devi is a slightly different tradition, but hugely popular. Hinglaj's uniqueness lies in its remote location, the arduous pilgrimage, the specific connection to the head, and crucially, this deep interfaith reverence, particularly with the Muslim caretakers. That's quite distinct.
Does its influence extend beyond Pakistan?
Oh, absolutely. The reverence for Hinglaj Mata is very strong in the Hindu diaspora, particularly among communities with roots in Sindh and Balochistan, like many Sindhi Hindus in India.
So the connection remains strong even after partition and migration?
Very strong. Hinglaj Mata is deeply embedded in their cultural and religious identity, and you see this reflected in the creation of replica temples.
Replica temple.
Yes, in India and sometimes even further abroad. Devotees who can't make the difficult, perhaps politically complicated journey to Balochistan can still worship Hinglaj Mata in these replica shrines, maintaining that spiritual connection. It shows how enduring that devotion is.
What about personal stories, accounts from pilgrims?
Those are incredibly powerful. You hear accounts passed down through generations, stories of faith tested on the journey, answered prayers, profound spiritual experiences at the shrine. Historians and priests who study the site also offer invaluable insights.
And for the diaspora, it's more than just a deity, isn't it?
For many, yes. It's a connection to an ancestral homeland, a cultural touchstone, a symbol of identity that persists across borders and generations. There's a deep emotional resonance.
Is there devotional literature or music specific to Hinglaj?
Definitely. There are hymns, prayers, stotras dedicated specifically to Hinglaj Mata, praising her power and grace.
And local music.
Yes. Regional bhajans, particularly in Sindhi and related languages, that celebrate the goddess, often incorporating elements of the landscape and the pilgrimage itself. Music is a huge part of keeping the tradition alive.
Looking at today, how does Hinglaj Mata resonate in the 21st century? Does it have relevance beyond the purely religious?
I think it does, in several ways. For one, the focus on potent feminine divinity can be seen as, well, resonant with contemporary feminist spirituality movements, celebrating the sacred feminine.
That's an interesting connection. What else?
Its location in Hingle National Park links it inherently to environmental concerns. Protecting the sacred site often goes hand in hand with conserving the unique ecosystem around it. There's a growing awareness of that link.
Sacred ecology.
Precisely. And perhaps most importantly, in a world often marked by conflict, especially interreligious conflict, Hinglaj stands as this remarkable, enduring example of interfaith harmony, of shared reverence.
A potential model for peace.
Perhaps not a direct model, but certainly an inspiration, shows that shared respect for sacredness can bridge divides. It's a testament to something deeper connecting people.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway for you?
For me, it's how Hinglaj powerfully demonstrates that divinity, or maybe sacredness, it really isn't confined by our human borders, geographical, political, religious. The power isn't just in the cave, it's in the hearts of the people who revere it, wherever they are.
And it's a story of unity, isn't it? In a place one might not expect it. Resilience, too.
Absolutely. Unity, resilience, the enduring strength of faith, and how it can foster connection even across seemingly stark differences. It's a story that feels very necessary right now.
So Hinglaj Mata is more than just a temple. It's a journey, a symbol, a testament to something enduring.
Yes. Perseverance, faith, the beauty of shared heritage, surviving and thriving in a really unique corner of the world.
It really makes you think.
It does. And maybe a final thought for you listening. In our world, which often focuses so much on what divides us, what can a story like Hinglaj Mata's truly teach us about the unexpected ways faith, culture, and even the land itself can actually connect us?
That's a profound question to ponder. The enduring power of belief and how shared traditions can create unity in the most unlikely landscapes. Thank you for that journey.
Thank you. It's a truly remarkable story.